Thank you for taking the time to connect with us here at Classic 107, Maestro, from your home in Amsterdam. I know the first thing on all of our minds, how are you and the family doing?
We're all fine. It's been more than a month now that I'm here, and as I say, I'm happily stuck with my family here at home in Amsterdam. In fact, I returned after the back-to-back Beethoven concerts with Winnipeg Symphony, just to be here for 4 days to attend some family matters and to return back to Winnipeg again for a couple of weeks of concerts. But then things started to, unfold so quickly and not in the direction we all wanted to see. And then together with the administrative leadership of the orchestra, we decided it doesn't make any sense for me to start traveling to Winnipeg, get stuck somewhere, quarantined, isolated, and, not being, and we were right, because the 24 hours after I was supposed to leave, the Canadian borders were shut, social distancing was implemented, and the orchestra, had all its shows canceled. So if you want to be stuck and be quarantined or self-isolating anywhere, the only blessing in this situation is being with your family, with your loved ones.
And that's exactly what I wanted to say, is I think all of us are looking for silver linings at this time. And what a silver lining for you to be able to spend time with the family, not something you get to do all too often, right? How many days of the year do you spend on the road?
I counted, since now I have a lot of time to do all kind of administration, I counted that averagely over the last 5 to 6 years, I spent on the road roughly between 250 to 275 days a year.
Wow.
Half of that time recently in Winnipeg. And that means that, as great as it is, it took initial effort from all members of my family to get used to the fact that, as I call it, the density of population on a square meter of our apartment has been largely increased by my presence and lasting presence. Because I don't remember when I last spent more than a month in one piece being at home, just like never, And it's great, but it's not what I do best and gladly, But if anything, being able to see my kids and wife every day for an extended period of time, it's the great solace you can take in a current situation.
A great solace indeed. And I would also ask how you're spending your time, but I think I already know at least part of the answer. It's been a joy to follow the new WSO musical pairings program on social media. Your love of cooking just so evident in the kitchen, from the polenta to the eggplant to your innovative use of the conductor's baton as a skewer. That has to be a lot of fun for you.
Yeah, well, I say that anything which becomes a routine ceases to be fun, but the initial impulse to get into that, and actually this is the first times in my life that I'm filming my modest cooking skills, was the fact that the first thing I was supposed to do after coming to Winnipeg, last time when I could make it there, was the wonderful Maestro hits Inferno at Infernro's Bistro with Fern Kiro. It's wonderful cooking extravaganza fundraiser we figured out with all musicians of the WSO who would have been participating, and cooking for roughly 160, 170 people. We had everything set, and then it was like, almost an act of rage, that I was deprived of this chance to do this in Winnipeg. I said, I have to do this here. And I also noticed that the level of desperation and anger, and also in a way helplessness, that you feel, particularly in the first couple of days of this tremendous impact the current situation has on our lives, just led to the fact that you had to react it out in somehow positive way. There was so much desperation around, and the day I learned that all my beloved WSO musicians and staff and the systema teachers are being laid off, it was like waking to some of the most rudest realities of my life, and really a devastating day. And but then with the days after that, I just realized there was so much anguish and anxiety and trouble and brokenness and uncertainties and fragility around it. I just grasped for some something positive, and I thought, you know what, today we're going to do something interesting, something different. Let's go to the kitchen. For me, this has been always a place where I could, in the midst of the most complicated travel schedule and repertoire piling up and all family responsibilities and whatever happens in my life, even if I'm heavily jet lagged and arrive basically a couple of days between changing planes and suitcases, it's a place where I can recharge, where I can switch off my worries and charge some positive energy. And usually, there are attempts of entering the kitchen by my loved ones during my cooking, and this is always fun, the way they react to me making the mess. And I'm cooking much cleaner on video than I'm usually doing. So help to my daughter. She's a very meticulous camera person. So yes, it's been one of the sources of positive energy, but not the only one.
No, of course. I think it also offers us a little bit of control to be able to go into the kitchen in this uncertain time, to be able to really figure out what we're going to make and how we're going to make it, and to see it through fruition. And of course, you are also drawing all the parallels between a finely crafted meal and a symphony, and people can follow along on the blog.
Yeah.
Though I do want to mention in the introduction, there's a beautiful, magnificent, it looks in your study like a wall of scores, a very inspiring wall. In this time as a conductor, are you able to kind of... Oh, there it is.
It's still there. It's a lot of scores.
Are you able to kind of return to old scores, dust off those, or maybe discover new ones in this time?
The first couple of weeks, now it's increasingly, I'm finding some peace with that. But the first couple of weeks, I would not be afraid to admit, there was so much anger and disappointed in me. I just couldn't. I was completely shutting off. I couldn't look at any music. I couldn't listen to any music because my whole study was surrounded by piles of scores that I was not being able to conduct. Like every day would bring, and still does, would bring a message from an orchestra or organization or a festival or a recording project that is canceled or postponed indefinitely. And I usually, not to mess up the projects and not to forget some scores for my long travels, I make neat piles of them, like stacks of scores on the floor. At a certain point, I was just sitting in an armchair in my study, surrounded by all this like stacks and piles of scores, looking at it's like a shattered life, everything which would not happen. And then, but the first step was to put them all back in place. That happened yesterday, and here and there, I would pick up on something, and have a look and make a note. Listening to music was more difficult lately than actually looking at the scores. But I found one unexpected source of comfort in playing myself again. And this is again something which is also funny. As a trained instrumentalist and violist, I chamber musician, soloist, and before that orchestral player, I haven't been actually playing for more than 12 years now. I left it completely, if not for the last year's Winnipeg Symphony April Gala, where I was I had courage enough to play with my wonderful principals and concertmaster Gwen Habik, and it was a lot of fun. And I worked
and you
hard
played beautifully. I was there. It was absolutely magnificent.
Yeah, and I worked hard, and I had so much fun. But after that, again, it's April again, and I haven't played for a year again. And my viola is in Winnipeg because actually I had some plans, and I would not discuss all of this because some of them might be a surprise in the future. But I had my viola in Winnipeg, and I was actually planning on coming in March to Winnipeg and in April to pick up and practice a little. So I was here, and I had this urge to play something, and I didn't have my instrument. So I called a few violin dealers, but some of them are closed, others didn't have anything. And then I called a great friend, a former principal violist of the Hague Philharmonic, and he said, "You know what? Come, I'll find for you something." And he gave me his one beautiful instrument and my ex bow he bought from me a couple of years ago, which is it's also it's a joke of a moment, you know. So I suddenly I had an instrument, and I'm nowhere near being in any kind of shape, but the physical ability to put your inner world, your anguish, or your thoughts, your discomfort into sounds. It's something we musicians need to have. And if you're a conductor and you're deprived of a chance to inspire others to play things, you enable them. The only thing you can do is play yourself. And if you don't have this opportunity, it's hard. So now yesterday again, I played for half an hour and played some Bach, and it doesn't sound good, but it doesn't matter anymore because I'm not sharing it with anyone. But it's important that I produce the sounds, that these vibrations that get back to me. And playing Bach is so universally gorgeous. It doesn't matter if you're a believer or not. If you enter a church and there's a beautiful service and people are singing and there's a wonderful architecture and you see these icons and the story and the heritage, you're still being part of it, even if you're not religious. And with Bach, it's the same thing. It's like entering a kind of service. And even if you're not a believer, you get so much comfort from it. So that was beautiful. And today I was helping my daughter with something, and now we're planning to make another cooking video maybe. And you know, the joke of it is that like every day I'm going, or every second day I'm going to groceries, and I feel like I'm going to shop for a week, but it happens every second day. So you're shopping every second day for groceries for a week, and somehow it just disappears. And I'm sure we all eat excessively much right now. It's not only the comfort of cooking, but also comfort of cooking and then sharing, and that means that you eat together, and that is also one of the things that doesn't happen so often in my family. You know, especially when the schools are on and the music academy for my son is on. You know, our daughter is 2 years away from graduating from high school. Our son is graduating from his bachelor's in music next year, and their institutions also shut, so we're all here, and our daily regime schedule is vastly impacted. So we do have more often than less breakfasts and lunches and dinners together, which never happens, regardless of whether I'm at home or not, because everyone has his life, you know, and pulse.
Well, I mean, you mentioned Bach and the comfort that Bach has been providing, and musicians everywhere, it seems, turning to their instruments to provide comfort to those listeners. And I'm thinking of all the streaming concerts that are online, and
Yeah.
even the WSO's own Carl Stobbe performing music of
Oh
Bach,
yeah.
the unaccompanied violin sonatas. Beautiful performances they are. Have you had a chance to speak with members of the orchestra at all?
I didn't have a chance to speak to the members of the orchestra, but I tried to stay in touch with them through various means. First of all, I write. One of the first things I did, of course, I wrote a letter to them all to express my confidence in that we will overcome this terrible crisis and get out of this stronger than we are. And I tried to help comfort that and to share my anxiety and anguish by the fact that they're all laid off and we are all laid off and have to endure seemingly clear financial hardships as well. But for me, I believe truly that, you know, financial and material discomfort and crisis, this is something we will overcome. You can get used to some of that. You can postpone some of that. You know, governments are stepping in various ways, you know, helping with different programs. But what impacts our lives even more, especially when you're a musician, a performing musician, is the fact that we're not able to do, not to do what we do, but to be who we are. Because being a musician is not a profession; it's not a skill. I am completely convinced about this. This is who we are. This is what we are. This is the condition. Some of us maybe are more taking it more professionally, you know. But for majority of people I am blessed to interact with, this is the hardest thing: is just not being able to be who we are. And who we are is playing together, creating this wonderful art and sharing it with others. And and then of course I'm writing in writing communication. And the moment I saw Carl's first video, I listened to it and I've written to him, and I'm communicating with other members of the orchestra. And it's hardly possible to communicate with everyone, but we follow each other, whether it's Instagram or Facebook, and that's great, you know. And professionally, every week we have 2 to 3 meetings, whether with a senior staff or
Wonderful.
the you know, like the the amount of people who are now actively working with WSO are brought down to a complete minimum, and we are all on seriously reduced salary, and we're trying to keep this organization alive and prepare the next season. And we know that we're not allowed, most probably, to do anything until the end of the summer, and we are really confident and hopeful that we're going to start our season with a bang, and it will be the next season. And we're well worried about what happens, and we're all humans, and we want to stay all healthy, and we all have loved ones, and some of our acquaintances are in trouble contracting the virus, there's not a single corner in the world that hasn't been impacted by that. So and there's, various ways of keeping in touch. Some are physical, in terms of, like having a written communication. Others are by addressing people, cooking in front of others, or like Carl is playing. I can't play as well at this point as many of our musicians and others. Like Jan Kochman has beautifully played a Syrinx by Debussy, and I see my winds practicing, and some are playing with themselves, like Aidan Clear, this wonderful Two Horns episode, and Patty Evans is. And Ken, it's everyone, and it's great to see that to acknowledge that they also miss each other, because all these channels of trying to stay together online on social media just speak to the fact that we are used to, when we work, we used to meet every morning for rehearsals or every night for a performance, and when we suddenly don't have it for a longer period of time, you suddenly realize how much that means, that. And it's not only music, it's also, being with each other, and sometimes disagreeing, sometimes convincing each other of something opposite. But ultimately, it's about this one incredible magic that unites us all, and that's music. And we try to share this magic with everyone else, and it's just hard. We cannot comfort people in this very difficult time of our lives with something we do so well. And I'm convinced that the moment this is all going to go into a more normal direction, we will be some of the first ones to be called upon, because people's spiritual batteries are running completely empty now. And I think that the hazardous impact of people being hollowed out so profoundly through the lack of interaction and access to culture, in the long run, is more dangerous than any virus itself. Because if we are there just to work, eat, and sleep, not having access to everything else, and everything else is interaction and culture, just however you put it, it's not worth being there.
Well, we so are looking forward to the time when you and the WSO can recharge those spiritual batteries that you mentioned. Maestro, I really do want to take a moment to thank you for continuing to provide some sort of comfort, be it in the kitchen, with the music, with the playlists that you are curating to accompany your cooking. And again, we so look forward to having you back in Winnipeg when it is safe to do so. And thanks for taking the time this morning, I guess afternoon for you, to connect with us.
Yeah, it's
Winnipeg's Classic 107.
Thank you very much, Simon. I can tell you that, the moment I can raise my hand, whether in rehearsal, in a concert, and have these wonderful musicians and artists of WSO play music we all love, it's going to be one of the happiest days of my life, I'm sure. And I really hope that this interview is going to be listened to by many of our passionate listeners and patrons, and we would need their support more than ever by coming to our concerts and sticking by us and buying tickets and subscriptions and coming more often than they maybe even used to. We will need them more than ever.
As we need you. Maestro, thank you so much. And of course, be well.
Thanks a lot. You too. Stay safe and healthy.